Hello and welcome to the best of the World Economic Forum in Davos, Switzerland 2022. Over the last 1 week, we brought you interviews with some of the biggest voices in international industry. We brought you the India story here in Davos. On this special program, a look back at some of these big interviews. Adar Poonawalla of the Serum Institute of India, the largest vaccine manufacturer in the world. We also speak to Rishad Premji, the MD of Wipro, one of the largest IT services companies in the world. And we also speak to K.T. Ramarao on the Telangana story, why Telangana has been very much the buzz over here in Davos. Interestingly, there were also several young, small Indian entrepreneurs over here. We speak to some of the leading startups who've come over here from Tamil Nadu. All that and a lot more on this special program. Our first interview on the special program with Adar Poonawalla of the Serum Institute of India. They make the AstraZeneca vaccine, what we call Covishield in India. The world is coming out of COVID, or that's what we all hope. The pandemic is still there. But the big question is this: what have we learned from the pandemic? And is there any way in which countries around the world can come together to learn from what we've just had to ensure that our response to any pandemic in the future can be faster? The question I really want to ask you is, when are we going to be prototyping a vaccine which deals with all the strains of COVID?
Well, that's well put, because the next generation vaccines, given enough time for research and development, should ideally be able to even block transmission.
Right.
What we saw this time around was great vaccines that could prevent hospitalizations and severe disease. But as you rightly said, to deal with future mutant variants and to prevent breakthrough infections.
Right.
The real research is on now, which does take a little bit of time. And maybe in a year or two we could see, a second generation vaccine that could prevent transmission also. And that's how you really work toward eradicating or minimizing the spread of a disease. Even the research at the moment is based on combining the COVID vaccines with flu vaccines.
Right.
And that could be an ideal booster for people to take every year.
Right.
Where you just have one jab and it takes care of, a family of viruses.
Yeah. You're here in Davos because you really are hoping to bring together leaders around the world to sort of be in a position to deal with pandemics better.
Absolutely.
That's one part of it,
Yeah, so I'm hoping to use the platform here and everyone, whether it's the world leaders or the multilateral organizations, to actually draft some sort of global pandemic treaty which would help the global solidarity of coming together. We all know what went right and what went wrong in this pandemic. And some of the things that went wrong in terms of sharing of raw materials and vaccines, recognizing vaccine certificates, global harmonization of clinical trials and manufacturing, making more vaccines accessible and treatments accessible globally. So these are the kind of things I would hope to establish, where if you had a global pandemic treaty that would address these issues, it would definitely make it easier with a predefined framework for leaders also to explain to their constituents and to deal with other countries in a predefined framework now.
So let's talk a little bit more about the India situation. Now, we've got Covovax. It's been granted emergency use licensure in India, but it's still difficult to get for adults. It's not there last I checked on CoWIN. Am I wrong? Or
well, I think there's some procedural issues, but I think most of the adults, as you know, have been vaccinated with either Covishield or Covaxin. So for dose 1 and 2, I don't think there'll be many takers for Covovax. But I think, as you know, it's approved between 12 and 18 and very soon for going down to the ages, down to the age of 2 or 3. So I think, now we need to get the children vaccinated and protected. I think, looking at toward future mutant variants of concern, it's important to vaccinate the children also. So I think that's where India is at the moment, and we've done very well. Our coverage is far higher than most countries. If you look around, I think, 90% of adults, more than 90%. I don't think any country's reached that figure.
And our numbers are huge. Just another point, when we're talking about dealing with a global pandemic, the SII has actually invested a great deal of money in a facility where you can really move fast in expediting production. So when you talk about a response, the infrastructure, the hardware and the people who do this actually exists in our country.
Absolutely.
And
so one of the lessons that we learned was that we need to be able to vaccinate our own nation in a matter of 3 months. God forbid there's another pandemic. We can push the button and produce, now we have a 4 billion dose capacity from 1.5 pre-pandemic. And
this is because of the new facility.
Correct.
Right.
And that's added another 2 billion doses to our capacity. So now we could technically make whatever India needs within 3 months, and then immediately, export and support other nations as well. Now that is the level of our bandwidth, and don't forget, other manufacturers also have scaled up. So India now has roughly a 6 billion dose capacity between all the Indian vaccine manufacturers combined, maybe even 7 billion.
Right.
So, we are now far better prepared in terms of capacity also going forward. And I feel we're far more prepared. We can, make better decisions, faster decisions going forward. And I just hope we're never in that position again. But if we are, I'll tell you, there's no country that is more prepared than India. I mean, you look at our testing infrastructure. You look at our health systems also, and hospitals and everything. So, we're in a very good place.
One of India's outperforming IT companies has been Wipro. In this interview with the chairperson of Wipro, Rishad Premji, I speak, among other things, on how sustainable growth is very much a mantra of the Wipro group. How going green is important, how in a finite period of time they will move 100% to solar. He also speaks about the philanthropic traditions of his family, of the Azim Premji Trust and the Wipro Trust. That's in this special interview. We'll talk about IT in a bit, but you were telling me something fascinating about sustainable development and the IT sector, and how Wipro has certain targets to make this more than just shop talk. You're actually going to do something about it. How?
No, one of the things that's becoming an important conversation world over, and certainly here at Davos, is sustainability. I think the world needs to be focusing on this on a urgent basis, and that's a conversation that's happening very prevalently here. We as a company, as I was mentioning to you, Vishnu, last year in April, committed to transform to net zero. We were one of the few founding companies, which means true decarbonization by the year 2040. And so that's a very, very important focus for us, with a interim commitment of 55% by 2030. We've also got these targets approved by a standard called SPTI, which is incredibly important. So how we go about doing it is critical. And there are a few interim milestones that we've set for ourselves in terms of how do we actually get to that 55%. Certainly. So renewable energy, 100% of our campuses will have renewable energy by 2030. All our transport vehicles that we use as a company will be electric vehicles. And so those kinds of things are the way we're sort of moving forward. But it's something we think is incredibly important from a community standpoint. And frankly, it's also becoming incredibly important from a business standpoint. It's becoming table stakes to participate on a global basis, in my view.
Web 3.0, the metaverse, blockchain, of course, has been spoken about for a few years. And of course 5G, which is the underlying technology which will really propel all of this. Do you see a serious change coming about in the Indian IT sector and consumers like me with some of these ideas, becoming more reality than just talk?
No, I mean, they are reality, right? I mean, blockchain technology has been around for a while. It is the underlying technology for crypto. I'm of the view that the new real world will be a true combination of the physical world and the digital world. That is the new world. So the metaverse is real. I mean, I think it is going to change the way we work, the way we transact, the way we communicate, the way we interact, right? And so there's a reality that will prevail. Customers are evaluating that very seriously. I know one of our teams just had a meeting in the metaverse. We are going to have an executive committee in the metaverse. So customers are certainly moving in that direction.
But there are other issues as well in terms of international perception. There is a problem of polarization in our country. There's a problem of arguments that communities are being deliberately targeted. In terms of the international environment and how the world sees India, are these problems?
No, look, I think there's huge optimism on India, right? And there's a huge delegation from India here at the forum. And I think there's a lot of excitement in terms of the India potential. You know, I had one chairman tell me the other day that this is India's decade, and if we don't capture it, we'll miss out on the opportunity. So I think there's a huge positivity around India. There's certainly a de-risking strategy around China, as we all know. I think it's becoming even more urgent given the no tolerance for COVID policy. So there's a short-term opportunity there as well. But I'm very optimistic about the positivity around India, and India is a long-term investment destination, not only from a manufacturing perspective, from a supply perspective, but also as a domestic market.
You've spoken about the talent base being a problem. Perhaps you're referring to India, I think, specifically. How is that going to be filled? I mean, are you getting the talent that you seek to sort of perform at the very highest levels in the IT sector?
No, I think India is the talent destination for digital talent, for tech talent of the world, and I think we can really own that space long term. So I think that's incredibly powerful for us as a country.
When we talk about Wipro, we talk about what your achievements as a company have been, but I think what really impresses a lot of people is what you've actually put into society. Your father did this. I know that the Wipro Foundation does this as well. And I have some statistics over here which, India's top 1% makes 3 times more than the bottom 10% combined. More people are being pushed into poverty as prices rise. And then you've got a foundation like yours which continues to try and help people. Why do you do this?
Look, our philosophy is to whom much is given, much is expected, right? Our philosophy is that you cannot, living in a country like India, be divorced and disconnected from the realities and the challenges of the ground. You cannot take this privilege for granted. You just cannot. And so it's an incredibly core part of my father's philosophy. I deeply agree and resonate with it, and so it's core to us.
Yeah.
But but there are 2 distinct pieces. One is the Wipro Foundation, which is the work that Wipro does. The other is the Azim Premji Foundation. Yes. And I don't know how many people know this, but 67% of the economic interest of Wipro is irrevocably owned by the Azim Premji Foundation. So I tell customers this all the time, that 67 cents or 67 paise of every dollar or rupee we make goes to a good cause. But that's deeply important to us. We grew up as a unit of 5 with my grandmother. My grandmother started and ran something with somebody else called the Children's Orthopedic Hospital in Bombay. It focused around polio and cerebral palsy. And so from very early days, the sense of giving and being part of the community was just at the background. It was just always a part of our existence. And then, when Wipro really came into its own in early 2000, we discussed this, and we were of the view, and my father particularly, that look, you cannot not do something. You just cannot. And that was as simple as that.
One of the most impressive Indian participants at the World Economic Forum in Davos this year has been K.T. Rama Rao and the state of Telangana. They've had a large pavilion over here, but they've also worked really hard to try and bring in more investment. In this interview, K.T. Rama Rao tells me not just about the Telangana story from an investment and technology standpoint, but also about crucial politics which affects his party. Will they now seek to extend their presence outside Telangana? And is it possible to have a third or perhaps a fourth front without the presence of the Congress party? For starters, it's a great pavilion you have. I mean, it's large, it's spacious. Has there been a great deal of interest in people coming in and investing even more in Telangana?
Vishnu, I'd like to call my state a startup state because we've been founded, or we've been created as a new state about 8 years ago, and we've been coming to Davos. Now this is the fourth year in a row.
Youngest state, right?
Youngest, and also now we are a veteran in Davos because we've been coming here for 4 years in a row.
Right.
So therefore, we are very familiar with the ecosystem here. We are very familiar with the World Economic Forum. In the last 4-5 years of us coming here, I think what we've been able to accomplish is basically create relationships, a lot of networking opportunities, a lot of people that were unfamiliar with the India story. I keep saying one thing. While India is a country and while we all work under the larger rubric of India, the fact is there are 28 different Indias, especially when it comes to investment.
Yeah.
So there are 28 different gateways to choose from.
Pharma, and I have been covering vaccines very closely. India is an area of excellence, but in terms of overall vaccine manufacture, I'm talking about COVID vaccine manufacture, the statistics out of Telangana are stupendous at a global level. What are those statistics?
Vishnu, firstly, not just COVID, but I think human vaccines at large. We are the vaccine capital of the world.
Right.
33% of global human vaccines are produced from Telangana. between Sanofi, Bharat Biotech, Biological Evans and Indian Immunologicals. We produce 9 billion doses, and that accounts for nearly 1/3 of human vaccines produced globally. That makes us the vaccine hub of the world.
Right.
And more importantly, not just vaccines, but we are also the bulk drugs and pharmaceuticals capital of India. And we are actually in the process of creating the world's largest pharma cluster in about 19,000 acres. Last week we were in London. We entered into a memorandum of understanding with King's College, basically trying to set up a world-class life sciences university in Telangana as part of the Pharma City, which is the vision of our Honorable Chief Minister. And what we're even more kicked about is, as a city where biology meets technology, as a city where data sciences meets life sciences.
MedTech.
MedTech, and more importantly, Vishnu, the interface of technology and life sciences, technology and biology, is what makes it an exciting frontier.
Sure.
Because the next decade or next 2 decades, if you ask me, are going to belong to life sciences. And I'm a very, very strong believer that with technology permeating into every sphere of life, information technology is basically going to rule the roost for the next couple of decades.
T-Hub, the world's largest incubation facility. By world's largest, what do you mean?
Well, in terms of physical square footage, it's 375,000 square foot, and it's bigger than Station F, which is the largest incubator in Paris. So we are launching it on the 28th of June. As it is, we have India's largest tech incubator. But this T-Hub phase 2, when it would be launched end of June, I would of course invite you. But it would have 2,000 startups working under one roof, and it will have everything that a startup would require in terms of innovation, incubation, and incorporation and scaling up.
Right. That sounds really impressive, and in fact the images of the structure itself are very, very large, significant. Onto a completely different area which we were talking about, lift irrigation. You have the world's largest lift irrigation facility. So, just describe to us the significance of this.
We take a great deal of pride in talking about this, because all along we've been hearing about Chinese execution and what has been accomplished in another country, but now India can take a lot of pride in showcasing this project to the rest of the world and say that we have completed this project in a breakneck speed.
Are you forging a third front? A meeting of non-Congress leaders, is that something that is actively something which your party is looking at?
Well, I do believe that both the national parties, and we do believe as a party, that both Congress and BJP in the last 75 years of independent India have really let down the nation. Vishnu, if you think about it for a minute and leave aside the political virtues and overtones, in 1987, both India and China were equal in terms of GDP, 470 billion. What happened in the last 35 years? Today they are at 16 trillion, we're languishing at 3 trillion. All these dreams that we're shown of 5 trillion economy, unfortunately not realized firstly, and secondly actually they're a letdown if you ask me. Because 25 consecutive years of double-digit growth is what China has accomplished. Where are we at? What are we focusing on? We don't still have every village of ours connected with a good BT road. We still have villages languishing for lack of power. We still have millions of homes without potable drinking water. So as a country, I think these two national parties, which have been given a chance over the last 75 years, have let us down. So my party and my leader, our Honorable Chief Minister, believes that the national, it's not about a third front or a fourth front. It's about setting another alternative agenda for the nation, where we need to, a country like Singapore.
So without Congress?
I'm saying, it's about an alternate
I
agenda.
It's not
what
just
you're
about, but in terms of numbers, Sharad Pawar, for example, says you can't keep the Congress out.
Well, who knows? I mean, there are multiple viewpoints in that, but what I would like to believe is that both Congress and BJP have let down this nation.
And in terms of your party extending itself outside Telangana itself, are we going to see a real nationwide presence?
Who knows, Vishnu? Who knows what future has in store for all of us?
But is that a goal?
See, I believe what Telangana has accomplished in the last 7 years, if that can be replicated at a country level, why not? Why should we not present this?
But are you working
this
towards
model?
that?
We might. I mean, like I said, I think
And
we
where
are
would you
showcasing. There was a Gujarat model that was talked about prior to 2014. I think a real development model in Telangana, where we have been able to connect each and every home with a portable drinking water connection, where our per capita income has risen from 1,24,000 in 2014 to 2,78,000 rupees now, where our GSDP has risen from 5,06,000 crores to 11.55 lakh crores now. I think this is real development, real economic progress. If this needs to be talked about, if this needs to take center stage, I think we should welcome it.
And when you speak to people over here, are you asked questions on why is there polarization taking place in India? Why are you talking about Gyan? Why are you digging up your history? I mean, where do you stop? Where do you stop digging?
When I'm in Switzerland, when I'm in Davos, I represent India, Vishnu. Sure. So therefore, anybody, when they ask me any question about India, of course I defend my country.
Sure.
I am a proud Indian, Telanganite, second, Telangana second. But when it comes to the internal discussion, of course, I share a lot of those sentiments. But unfortunately, those issues that need to take center stage are not being discussed, while halals, hijabs and all other nonsense, unfortunately the polarizing stuff that gets discussed becomes national headlines.
The Davos story has also been about important Indian startups which have come here. We met several startups from the state of Tamil Nadu. They were here with the industries minister of Tamil Nadu. He takes a couple of their questions, but it was deeply impressive to see several Indian startups over here and talk about what they bring not just to India, but around the world. What brings you over here? What is the essential message?
Sure. We're really happy to be representing the phenomenal growth of Tamil Nadu tech startup space here. I run an artificial intelligence and satellite remote sensing company that promotes sustainability in aquaculture. So we are working with farmers, 60,000 odd farmers, and improving their productivity as well as market linkages in aquaculture space. So in the advent of new technologies like artificial intelligence, it is important that we need to be nurturing startups so that they would be able to solve several challenges and opportunities, I would say.
What is your specialization as a startup?
So we are Impactory. We are a data tech and analytical firm in the social sector. We largely work towards building an SAP for the developmental sector. And there we are working with about 700,000 beneficiaries. We are a for-profit company across 10 states. And that's why we in fact have expanded our presence now in Tamil Nadu. With the main reason because we understand Tamil Nadu is becoming a key ecosystem play on the SaaS startup. So we hope you imagine, and what we plan to do is actually build it into the next SaaS capital of the world.
But do you have any question for the minister? Anything that you'd like him to do, or any comment at all?
So I would definitely think that we would have to have more ecosystems, and I think Davos is a great starting point where startups can work and plug into the government. Because what we do, for example, in India, in Davos, we've been requested by other governments also to see whether we can expand our offering to their countries, and I think that's where we can work.
You are most welcome in the sense that is why the government of Tamil Nadu, we would like to provide more assistance for startups, especially we want to make Chennai as the SaaS capital, as you have rightly pointed out. So in this connections, should you need any assistance from government of Tamil Nadu, we would be delighted to give it immediately. And to this effect, we have also formed Tamil Nadu TN, Startup TN, that's a company, a separate SPV is now formed. And we have now designated a separate CEO for that. So, which means that the Tamil Nadu government has now been keen interest in developing startup companies, and we would like to provide you with a startup ecosystem that will be mutually beneficial to you as well as to the industry.
How about you, ma'am?
So I am from Candy Factory. We are the only confectioners in the world to convert air into water and make confectionery that are globally relevant, and it is plant-based. So we have 100% women empowered factory unit. We're based out of Chennai.
Well, that's it then in terms of our programming from the World Economic Forum in Davos, Switzerland. We hope to be back here in the future with more leading interviews with top decision makers, whether they are business leaders, political leaders or policy leaders. With Kshitij Gupta and Rupan Pawar, Vishnu Show for NDTV.